2023 GR86, we're installing a Jackson Racing oil cooler. You should really do these things before you install an oil cooler. I'm going to tell you them right now. Alright, Jackson Racing oil cooler specifically for the Gen 2. Here's some key tips. Gen 1, Gen 2, I see people have issues with these lines leaking or popping off all the time. You can catch a failure before it happens simply by paint marking them. What do I mean by that? Each of these items I've torqued to spec, and then I've gone ahead and just used a regular paint marker and marked where these two guys have lined up. If I see during my regular services or during my track day this line backs off to the left, I know this fitting's coming loose, or I know this fitting's coming loose, or I know this fitting's coming loose. Whatever the case, because I've paint marked everything, I can stop a serious failure before it happens. Alright, now that we have our oil cooler installed, one thing you want to do before you do your first start is prime the engine oil. What do I mean by this? So we want to crank the car for 10 seconds, and what we're doing is circulating pressurized oil through the entire system. What we're trying to prevent is a dry start. And what do I mean by dry start? So we put on a new oil filter, so the oil filter is dry, the oil lines are dry, our oil cooler, which might take a half quart of oil in itself, are all dry. We want to try to put as much oil through the system as possible to prevent a dry start, and also to see if we have any leaks. Right now when the car's not started, so when we go outside we can catch a small leak rather than start the car right now and have a pressurized leak emergency, right? So how do you prime the oil system? Pretty simple. So clutch in, the car's not gonna crank without the clutch in, and then we're gonna go gas pedal all the way down. If you have an auto car, gas pedal all the way down is all you need to do on an automatic. And so gas pedal all the way down, this will tell the computer to not fire the injectors. It's gonna do exactly what we want. Crank the engine without the car starting. We're gonna do this for 10 seconds and then stop, go outside and check if we have any leaks. So here's what it sounds like. So while the car's cranking, we'll count to 10 seconds. I went outside, verified we don't have any leaks, so that's great. And I actually want to do this process one more time, prime the oiling system for another 10 seconds just to make absolutely sure that we're not going to have a dry start. So I'm going to prime the engine for another 10 seconds. We're going to go out into the engine bay and we'll come back. Alright, so far so good. No leaks from our oil sandwich plate or our lines. I do this while the bumper's off so that we can double check there's no leaks, there's no lines chafing, there's no potential issues. I'm going to look at my fittings on top of this oil cooler unit and it looks like we're good to go. And then last thing, before we start the engine, I'm actually going to double check our engine oil level. If this is low, I want to top off the engine oil level until this is at the full level. So I'm gonna go ahead and check, top off if needed, and then we'll start the car. After we start the car, I'm gonna let this thing run for, let's say, 5 seconds, double check my oil level. These FA24s are kind of finicky with checking oil level. You actually need to drive around the block one time, let this sit for another like 5 or 10 minutes, and then you can pull the dipstick and that should be your accurate oil level. Those are my personal tips for what you should do when installing an aftermarket oil cooler, or when you do any sort of major oil repair like resealing an oil pan, changing an oil pump. Always smart to prime the engine and check for leaks at that point. Appreciate the support, and I'll catch you guys next time.